Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an August 8th edition of the MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. We are right at the tail end of summertime, which means we're right about to get into what we call the gauntlet here in the IT channel, where every big conference practically happened in like a 90-day span. So buckle up. Let's see where we get to. Some housekeeping that we're going to get out of the way, and then we'll get into the good stuff. MSP Initiative.com. Here you'll find a copy of this session. Once we're done, we will post it under sessions and also to our YouTube page and our podcatchers. So you have an audio video format, like, download, subscribe, share, forward. You know what to do here, but this is where it will end up. MSP Community Minds, we are coming up on our Denver MSP live event in Denver, again, September 25th and 26th. We did one in Nashville earlier this year. Now we're circling back around to handle the other side of the country. You'll see our 2-day agenda posted, all of our MSP panelists, and our expert workshop presenters who will give you 2-hour lessons or workshops on a topic that doesn't have a credit card swipe at the end of that. So if you're interested in an absolutely jam-packed, straight-up educational event that costs you nothing to register if you're an MSP, other than, you actually have to get there, which will take you a little bit of effort and maybe it's some money, then you should check out MSP Community Minds. Again, you'll find that on MSPinitiative.com under MSP Community Minds. And then we have our 5, not 3, not 4, but 5 remaining block parties for the rest of the year. And remember that gauntlet that I mentioned? Here's kind of sort of what it looks like. We have IT Nation Australia coming up literally, I think, next week or in like less than 2 weeks. So, August 21st will be the night that we are doing the MSP Community Block Party along with the IT Nation event in Sydney. You literally walk down the street, don't even have to get an Uber or get on a bus. So if you're going to that event or happen to just be in the greater Sydney area and you're an MSP, come and register for this absolutely free event with networking, entertainment, and of course, a little bit of beverage of your choosing. And then we move on to PAX 8 Beyond in Berlin. This will be in October 14th, actually. We'll be announcing the venue here, but we'll be doing this, around the event there in Berlin. Hopefully it won't be super rainy because that's what I hear happens in that time of year. But don't worry, the venue that we'll be announcing is all indoors, so all good there. Then we go to Miami. For the DattoCon Miami event at the Fountain Blue on South Beach. We will be doing our event on October 29th, and it looks like we'll be on property. Again, don't have to go anywhere other than, couple elevators or escalators, whatever this, kind of path through the hotel is, but that'll be in Miami. And then second to last, we come back to IT Nation in Orlando, and here we will be announcing our bands shortly. Which, we had All American Rejects 2 years ago. Last year, Better Than Ezra, Sugar Ray Tonic as a combo. And this year, stay tuned. But that'll be in November at IT Nation. Again, this is the big one that kind of closes out the year almost. This will be November 6th in Orlando on International Drive. And so go ahead and register for that one. And then we actually close out the year back in Sydney for DattoCon. Sydney, right? So that'll close out on November 12th, which is the week after IT Nation in Orlando. And that'll be basically same area as the other event, just a little bit further down the calendar. So there's all of that. There's 5 left. Again, totally free for the community. Register ahead of time so you don't have to do it standing there. Of course, we have our community offers and our industry calendar, which take you up until the end of the year. And that is all of the housekeeping on MSP Initiative.com. I know it's a mouthful, but it's literally all there for you. So go check it out. All right. Now that that's out of the way, new guests on the show. First time, John from Bowman Williams. How you doing today, John?
I'm great, George. How are you?
A little wet today. Looks like for you too.
Same boat. Very wet.
Little monsoony for some reason, but
yeah.
So, of course, anytime we bring somebody net new onto the show, we like to talk a little bit about your background and how you get to today and maybe how you got into, the sandbox that we like to call IT MSP land. And then we'll go into the good stuff. So, well, go ahead, kick it off.
Sure. Thank you again for having me. My story. All right. Bowman Williams. I've been staffing the MSP industry for 15 years now. and we have just over 900 MSP clients that we staff around the country. So how I started the company was I got hired by an MSP right out of college. In fact, I was their third employee, and started working for them in a basement. We were selling 3Com telephony boxes, and I was going to like the BNI networking events and cold calling, and we grew that company to like 10 employees. And we were based out of Frederick, Maryland, so about like 30 miles outside of Washington, D.C. And by far the greatest bottleneck to our company was trying to find talent. And so after I left Computer Frontiers, I happened to land at a very large staffing firm, Robert Half, did well there. And then so I ended up leaving, I guess 15 years ago, marrying those two skill sets and experiences together to start Bowman Williams and to staff MSPs. And I always tell people that like work here, this quick story, but when I started the company, I actually didn't recognize I should be staffing MSPs. I was just doing like general staffing, anything I can get my hands on. My business was about to go under, after like 1 year being in there, because I didn't have a niche, go niche or go home. And I happened to cold call Stephen Fradkin, the CEO of Ventiva. And he's like, I'll cut you off right there. Just come in and talk to me. I go into Stephen's office and I'm like, I'm an IT staffing company. We staff all these different positions. He goes, here's what you're going to do. You're going to find me a strong IT generalist. They should be an experienced field tech supporting multiple SMBs, know how to navigate and close tickets in an SLA-driven environment. And I'm not going to pay you this. I'm going to pay you flat K, flat rate. And he goes, I'll hire 5 of these people a year from you. So essentially, he like took me, wrestled me to the ground. I acquiesced pretty quick, but he basically like made this relationship with me where it's his most ideal relationship with the staffing firm. But I now had a contract I could take to any MSP that would likely see the same value. So I went back to my desk. I called Marissa Withers, at the time was a data prize. And it was the first time I ever got a call back in like a year. And she's like, you know what, Scott Gordon, data prize hasn't worked with the staffing firm in 14 years, but he's curious to know what you have to say. And we've been growing ever since. That's how we got here.
Story. I like that. I like that. It's funny. Right before I got on here, I saw a post that like LinkedIn is full of so many lies, and I was like, huh. They're like, where he was telling the post was about a story where somebody like was bragging about getting an interview at this company and created a fake profile as an HR person at this company so that he could like create a post and then reshare it. And I'm like,
wow,
it's horrible.
It's a lot of work.
I was like, listen, this guy must have really not had a lot of time, things to do and had a lot of time on his hands to create this whole, fake person on LinkedIn. But I was like, that's hopefully an extreme case, but like people kind of fudge a lot of things in this whole story, right? Like, where was I? When was I? Was there a gap? Or did I look like I was working the whole time? And that's before we get into what do you actually know, and can you do what you say you can do, right? There's and I assume this is just how the industry works because you live in it, but fake it till you make it, or basically just over promising, under delivering, which nobody likes in the end because usually doesn't work out. You take that whole theme, right, which I'm sure you can expand on, and then we take current events, right? Can't help but keep bringing it up because, like today, I just saw that there is a class action lawsuit filed against Delta for the CrowdStrike incident.
Oh wow!
So now, so now Delta's taking a hit, right? And so now, of course, Delta's already said publicly we're going to have to go after CrowdStrike. We're still, following the news. But at the end of the day, it's like, let's marry these two things together. Somebody made a mistake in that company, right? Somebody in some team wrote a line of code, pressed go, probably didn't check with anyone. Nobody validated it. And it was, to my understanding, or at least is being advertised, the largest IT outage, that we've experienced in history. So you put all that together, this could start with somebody who probably got hired saying that they are the best thing since sliced bread. And then when it was all said and done, biggest IT outage on the globe.
Yeah.
Does that all match up? Does that line? I think it does. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, you got to figure out who you're getting into bed with, before you make a hire, and it takes, it's equally important to both sides. And like I live in this space, and I've created a business model around vetting talent. And we have what we call like the MSP Predictive Index, and it's a ranking scale of like their communication style, client facing. We do a technical MSP specific technical assessment that we've gathered and pieced together from other MSPs that we get, and like third ball play. We go through all these steps, and then we document. We're really big on like reasons for leaving, like why you on the market. Let's say they go and say because lack of career growth, and we say, all right, well, what does that mean? Oh, I haven't got a promotion in a year. Well, what was your last review like? How did that go? Oh, you didn't get a good review, and your peers got advanced. So it sounds like there's opportunity there. So like it is. I think interviewing is very much an art form, and it should be approached scientifically and repeated over and over again. I'm really big on that, and like to talk and consult my clients on it. But I mean, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You got to wrestle these people to the ground, and it's you can definitely have a crowd strike type of situation if you get it wrong. I mean, it could be very costly.
I mean, listen, how do you tell if somebody's just like being honest with you, right? I mean, a lot of people can say whatever they want, they can promise you whatever they want, they can, make up a story. Like if their references could just be people that, I mean, hell, people could just be hiring people to answer the phone and saying, oh yeah, he's great, work with them, so and so, all good. But and then like it's not even real, right? Like I mean, if somebody really wanted to, they could go to a length that, basically creates a fake person, right? Like,
Sure.
create a backstory, get some people serve as references, create a profile, make it sound like they did something. I mean, I guess the only thing they couldn't fake is like the employment verification check, but remember the scene from Seinfeld with George Costanza and Vandelay Industries?
Yeah,
And
fan.
he
Of
gave
course
him
I do.
Jerry.
Yeah.
He gave him Jerry's like apartment number and said, "Well, answer the phone,
Yeah.
Vandelay." Right?
Yeah.
Like this is
Hey,
what we're
Mandalay.
talking about, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
how do you like get to real?
Yeah. How do you get the real? I mean, unfortunately, getting a look under the hood is difficult. So we do a video interview. We spend 30 minutes talking with the person. We have a series of questions that we go through. We have a series of like sub questions and trying to get to the answer of things. And cutting right to it, honestly, it's usually a matter of like how much substance, like are they substantive when they're describing what they've done? Is there depth to it? Can they elaborate on it? And then we'll ask specific questions. And so, yeah, I think it's like you have to be curious. You have to be an investigator. You have to sniff out things that don't sound true. And hopefully when you're all done, you get this composite where things seem to add up appropriately and you get the references. And we do a two-prong interview approach. And so we have two individuals that will like chime in and weigh in on our MSP predictive index. So you get two different perspectives, and sometimes they can be different. I always recommend doing like group interviews. I think those are really important to trade notes. But without a doubt, I think it's one of the reasons we probably exist. I think I was just talking to an MSP owner. They're, managing partner. They're just over 100 employees, and I was working with them on like four positions. And the one I was helping him fill at the time, he said he had scheduled 6 interviews the month prior, and only one of those 6 people showed up for the interview. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just like indicative of what you're dealing with people. It's like herding hamsters. It's difficult. That's difficult.
So, and then like the other problem, because I remember, not horribly long ago, but not yesterday. Like there's a lot of companies that have popped up, and they're like, hey, can't find the people, no problem, outsource level 1 to us, right?
Uh,
Start shifting the water elsewhere because we are staffed up and you aren't. And how many people do you have to go through before you find the right one? And let's face it, a lot of MSPs are not the size of the companies that you just mentioned earlier. They're smaller shops, right?
oh yeah,
5,
yeah,
10, like you came from.
15.
And
Yeah,
like they can afford to hire 2, 3 people at a time and see if somebody shakes out, right? Like they can afford
right.
one person at a time. But then when you stack it linearly, what if it takes 2 years of people before they find one person that sticks?
That's right. Yes. I'd say our average sweet spot client is probably about 15 employees. That we do the math is like just right around there. So making a misstep and a miscalculation and putting the wrong person in the seat, you know, it's bad, especially like you're just getting started. I helped a 2-person MSP in Chicago recently get make their first official hire, and he recognized that this is an important piece, and a domino where like this one has to be the right hire and has to fit. And we talked about interviewing processes and questions and extending the offer and getting all that onboarding right so that it ended up working out. So I think it's absolutely crucial that people have like the right interview process and they stick to it. I mean, it's absolutely insane what you hear going on out there about like them putting someone in the seat that can cause just fires. It's bad. It can be very costly.
Well, let me throw a curveball at you, because in 2 sessions ago, we had a guy that's largely been in the compliance field, and he was saying, hey, what's, like, imagine the bad actor, right? The guys that apparently we can never get to, right? The Russias and the Chinas and the North Koreas and all these bad hacker groups that we always hear about, like, whatever. Like, they will literally send someone to get hired by a company, and now they're on the inside, right? I don't know if you watch a lot of TV or anything, but like, imagine the story where the gang, I'm watching Mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy Renner on Paramount Plus, if anybody wants a good show to watch. But so the drug dealers, the gangs on the outside, send somebody to get hired as a guard at the prison. And so now they got their guy on the inside, right? That's like, got the keys, right? So like, my point is, maybe that's like 18 degrees deep here, but like, could you imagine that, like, hey, going back to a CrowdStrike style event or a deep style event, it's like, hey, the bad guy was actually on the inside of the company. He didn't have to hack in.
Yeah, that'd be a crazy situation. I don't think we've seen anyone trying to infiltrate an MSP, but maybe it happened with CrowdStrike, But yeah, I know, I get you. I'm with you. It's you got to get it right.
No,
you got to get it right.
And then let me throw a more practical one at you then. Okay, I'm based out of Philly here. Don't hold it against me. I know you're probably a Baltimore fan. Actually, there's a preseason game, Eagles Baltimore tomorrow, or tonight, or no, tomorrow, Friday. But in Philly, right? A lot of the people, I went to a college that had a co-op program. It was part of the curriculum. Like, you have to do an exterior job multiple times before you can graduate. It's part of the curriculum. Not everybody has that, but my school did. And by the time you even get to graduation, the big companies, like, I don't know if SAP is a big company, but I mean, not an MSP focused company, but a big technology company. They're based out of Philly, right? Like, they hire a bunch of people. So by the time an MSP gets to what's left, you're the people that didn't get hired, right? Mm-hmm. So like, how do you find competent talent when you're fighting the mega corporation that has way more resources and for some reason can pay more as a result?
It's a great question. It's a very good question. I think a lot of MSPs find themselves in that exact situation. It can also hurt retention. And so, they can get drawn out by like much larger salaries. But it happens all the time. I think that MSPs, MSPs typically, there's inherently a fair amount of turnover in the industry. If someone comes into MSP and they haven't sharpened their teeth, being able to juggle multiple external clients and like the ticket load and the pace and the after hours work and having to quickly, hop in and look at the documentation to solve a problem. Someone that comes from like a more siloed, larger environment where the pace is slower, you get to be like more intimate with that one environment. That experience doesn't always translate. So our whole shtick is, hiring tangible, proven MSP experience so you can like mitigate and kind of check that box, knowing that person's not going to flake out because they can't keep up with the pace. But the competing salaries, if they're coming from another MSP, the average salary increase in the MSP industry that we've seen is like typically only around $5,000. So if they change for one, like that's from like level 1 help desk up to like, a senior project engineer. The average them all out, it's like right around there. It's not that much. But yeah, I think people MSPs, get blindsided a fair amount where they have a level 1 doing really good. They're getting incremental changes. They've picked up the skill set, and other companies might see value in it, and they'll end up leaving for 10, 15K more. And the MSP doesn't have a dog in the fight to throw money at the problem and retain that person. It's just too far outside of reach. But yeah, that is a problem.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you, I was going to say for $5,000, when you do the math, $5,000 divided by, 52
12,
weeks or whatever.
$400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay. How do you handle the I'm not interested in working outside of a 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, right? Like the people who are just like, don't call me, don't email me, don't look at me. I don't want to hear you, and you don't want to hear me. And I'll see you on Monday.
Say we're not the right resource for it, and you probably shouldn't work in the MSP industry.
Right? I mean, but
Yeah.
like this is a common topic that
Yeah.
comes up all the time.
Yeah.
How do your clients package that from a how do they, how do you see that being compensated in this like offer conversation?
Honestly, I think it's kind of a given. The only time it really becomes a topic of conversation or a point of contention if there's an excessive amount or it's a selling point to elicit a response to sell that company's opportunities. Like, here's their comp, here's the day-to-day and what you're doing. Oh, by the way, there's not that much after hours work, or some situations there might be none. And then so every candidate that we represent, we bring in about 175 new candidates every month that we're interviewing, right? And so all those candidates that we're interviewing have MSP tenure and experience, usually a couple of years. And then so they know what they're getting into. And, so then we're already selling them into an opportunity where like they're going to get a career advancement, more money, touch more technology. And usually the after hours work is kind of a given for the most part.
Okay.
Unless you're super senior. They don't like that.
Well, that's true. Well, because they think they've already done their time, right?
That's right.
And that's not totally unfair, to be honest. But if
Agreed.
it's a small company, right? You got to ask that question. So how about it didn't work out? Like from I don't know how deep we want to get into the structure of how you do things, but
Sure.
all right, like I get somebody, we go through the process, the interviews, background checks, the MSP score thing that you guys go through, right? The whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in, and like you're like, I don't think this is the right fit. Now what? How does that work?
So that's the situation where, I mean, you're always, you want the win-win-win. So we get around 78% repeat business year over year over year. So, and the average client that we have is usually around 15 employees ish. And so we usually pick up the exact 1.9 hires per client across all of our clients, 1.9. So we're always going to make sure like that. And this relationship with our clients only works if that person works out. And we know that. So it's kind of a given in the staffing industry, I believe, because we just do permanent placement. So we don't do contract to temp. So if they hire someone from Bowman Williams and that person, for whatever reason, doesn't work out by the 90th day, like that person's no longer there, we're going to replace that person for free. So that's how we treat it. We call it our guarantee period. I feel like 90 days is kind of a point where it's like ownership exchanges hands, where it's like, we've had a hand in the introduction, you've done your process and ours, and so that's where we personally draw the line. If a client gives us heads up, like a couple weeks into it, and they've noticed these red flags, like we'll almost always gladly extend it a couple months, 6 months if they need to do it. But that's how we personally handle it. And honestly, I completely understand the situation. If you paid a premium, you paid a placement fee, and that person didn't work out, like that's not good. Like you should let us know about that. But yeah, we definitely always want to avoid that one.
No, I get that, but like you do a lot. It sounds like you do a lot of placements, like 175 a month, you said, or, I think that was the number of candidates, right?
Correct. Number of candidates we interview.
Out of all the placements you do in a year, do you have a percentage on how many get kicked back?
I think it's around 4 or 5%. It was a little bit higher last year. And that could be because we've grown, but also like the industry is just a lot of companies are kind of, a fair amount are going in the opposite direction of up. And so that could have something to play into it. But yeah, it's typically 4 or 5% of the candidates that we place, I would say. Yeah.
How about the big one, right? I know maybe this doesn't affect MSP land as much as other industries, but we were working remote for a while, and now we're back to an office or sometimes hybrid?
Yeah.
Like, how does that whole conversation happening right now?
I feel like that's really terraformed the landscape for the MSP industry, probably a lot of industries, right? Um, I mean, yeah, people got comfortable working from home. They slowly started going back in the office. And what you're finding right now is a lot of candidates, even the more junior candidates, I guess maybe they feel a little bit entitled to it. I'm not sure. But people change jobs all the time for work-life balance and to be able to work from home. They'll take lesser salaries. So like on our interview process, we say like, what are you targeting? And then we have like a little note box. And a lot of people will say they're targeting, say, 80,000, right? And they're making 80,000 in their current MSP. They want 8,000 plus. But in the interview notes, we'll gather like they'll consider opportunities that are down to 70K if the position's full remote, because that they have a family and it's super important to them. And so if a company's a hybrid work environment, or they're primarily working from home, going on client sites periodically, that work from home portion, even if it's just like 2 days a week, that will usually suffice to check a box where people are like, yeah, I'm going to be interested. If it's 5 days in office, like I get it. A large portion of the industry is in that place of having everyone in the office. But yeah, it's something that a lot of candidates are inherently looking for. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's really changed things, man. It's really changed things in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, but from the management side, sometimes that's problematic, right? Like I'm
Sure.
sure you've heard, because this is your business, like takes longer for somebody to get integrated remote, takes longer for you to train
Yeah.
them remote. Like it's just like what probably gets done 10x faster when I'm standing in front of you just kind of drags out, right? And then like
Yeah. Yeah.
slows the whole thing down a little bit.
It does. It does. And I feel their pain. I mean, being completely honest with you, like I after COVID ended and we got a brand new office space, and I was super excited about it. I was proud of it. And I brought all my staff back into the office. And then, I think like slowly one by one, like almost like a large portion of my employees came in my office and they're like, I'm okay with being in the office, but you know what? So and so, I could tell they're really hurting. And everyone did that. And so finally I adopted, a 2 day a week work from home. I find that if a company is typically offering at least 2 days a week, they're not going to leave for 3 days a week. But I feel everyone's pain in this situation, and I feel for the owners too, because it's it can limit your candidate pool and it can draw employees away. Um, but yeah, it's difficult to navigate, man. I'm sure it depends who you ask on how to navigate it, but it can be an obstacle.
Fair. So like let's say a company is willing to do the full remote, which sounds like that could be you could use that as a leveraging point from a cost standpoint, but okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that for this call. Um, what about hey, I'm a company based in DC or Philly or New York, and I'm hiring a candidate from Kansas. The cornfields don't cost as much as, downtown, right? So
That's
like,
right.
what about that disparity, right? And being like, is that an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? Does it matter? I don't know. What do you say?
So absolutely, great question. I mean, when an employer goes out to hire somebody, they're gonna have a target range, and they will almost always seriously consider hiring a candidate that might be almost qualified, but far less expensive. It's a simple calculus, right? And makes a lot of sense. Dallas and Houston and Tampa, Florida, these are hot spots, lower cost of living, fair amount of saturation of MSPs down there. So like the talent pool could be, robust. You can get a lot of candidates if you, drop a line in the water. So yeah, it's a very attractive place to hire. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of MSPs recognize that. And so like, yeah, we have a presence in those three cities, Tampa, Houston, and Dallas, and we'll find that, yeah, the average salaries will be lower. But that's right. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, to be honest with you, those states and those cities are viewed as pro business, right? Like it's just less cost, less taxes, right? Like a little
Yeah,
warmer, hopefully. I don't know.
that's right.
I mean, from Philly, surely. What do you tell people who haven't done that, right? Like, let's say, hey, I started that MSP in Maryland. We only service people in Maryland. We've only had people from Maryland. And now we're considering for the first time, like somebody out of the state who I never even dealt with another state. I never registered with another state. Like they have to
Yeah.
go through that for the first time.
It's a great question. So I think that usually when an MSP comes to us and they have a full remote position, full remote is typically already baked into their business model. So they typically they know how to navigate and like set up taxes there and how to like pay the unemployment. And so I think I've only got asked that question maybe one or two times. So they have a general sense for it. And most companies that have that model, they're pretty agreeable about where the person might live and might just care about the time zone. But I think, yeah, the last time I did the math, it was like 18% of all MSPs that we staff at least are hiring full remote. And then the large majority is hybrid, which can be anything from, it's some portion and some mixed bag of working in the office or working from home. But then the number of that's continually been creeping up, and it has been since 2022, is the number of MSPs out there that want to have people in the office. And that's probably 50-50 with the hybrid.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is stats. You have a little bit of a macro thing going on, right? Like, because you're dealing with 900,
probably
different MSPs. So like, less than 20% full remote. I mean, to me,
that's right.
That's a clear indication, right? Like, this is for the people that are good at that, right? Like, not the normal. This is maybe a top, certain percentage, small percentage, sub 20%. So if you're saying, I don't know, I'm going to put a number to it. If you're saying 75% are hybrid, all right, that means they got to hire somebody within a specific geography, close enough to them that they can get to an office when the non-hybrid part kicks in, but flexible for some working from home, right? And then, I don't know, I'm going to put a percent, you correct me, right? Is it 10%? Is it 15% that are like, nope, in the office or bust?
Oh, like full in the office? I'd say it's like, it's probably 40, 20 to just to round it up. 40% are like full office, 40% hybrid, and then like the 18, 20% are going to be.
Okay, see, I'm glad I got the percentages out of you. All right.
Yeah.
So like 40%, that's a big flag too, right? It's like, hey, this is still the way we do business. This is the way it's always been done. No more reason to be at home. This is how we work. If you can't go somewhere else. 40% like, hey, we understand. Let's meet you in the middle. And then the other, people are like, I don't care. If you have internet and you have power and you're going to show up on time, you can work on the moon.
That's right. I feel like a lot of candidates, they realize that it is like, this is just the landscape. It is what it is. And so I remember 2021, maybe 2000, early 23, people like the candidates that hit the market, they really care. Like, it had to be full remote. Or a lot of them even said, like, it has to be, I want hybrid, because I want it to be a mixed bag. I think a lot of candidates coming into the market now have acclimated, they know what they're getting into, and they're not being drawn out into the looking for a new job because they don't have the work life situation that they want. And so my point is, like, they're very open. I think that like compensation is probably going back to being the trump card as opposed to the work-life balance. But for the last 4 years, that was predominantly what people were after, was work from home or hybrid.
What about the topic of, and I'm sure this goes each way, so I'd love to hear both sides of the coin. The acquisition, right? Could be, hey, I'm buying someone, and then inevitably they right size the staff and then people get let go. Or it could be, hey, I'm in hiring mode, right? Like the first company that you mentioned, big company, they're always acquiring, and they're like, hey, we need to add headcount, and I've budgeted for so many net new people each year, right? Like, does that, from your perspective, like, you could obviously benefit from both sides of that, right? Because if there's candidates getting cut, then you can help place them, or vice versa, right? Like, how much of that do you see on each side?
Man, yes, so many acquisitions. We saw, I think that the acquisitions probably being like candid, it probably ended up hurting us more than benefiting us. I feel like a lot of the companies that were, taking their companies and packaging them up to get sold, they're probably doing quite well. They could justify working, the staffing firm because they're growing so fast. And those are the ones that got acquired. I think that somewhere like our clients recently was like, I don't know, like 8% of all of our clients had gone through an acquisition. I'm not sure if that sounds like a lot to you, but that's a ton. And again, those like pretty good companies. But then there's typically a shakeout period. And so like we're sitting in the wings waiting for them to get back to us after the shakeout, and like the ink dries on the whole acquisition, and they got to settle into a new norm and then roadmap. So it pushes out our relationship typically months, a year. And so, but yeah, we still staff a fair amount of them. but they get so big, they have like their own HR staff now, and they might not necessarily have to rely on outside source to find people. But yeah, I mean, the amount of companies out there getting acquired and sold, and I have like other clients, you know, I mean, one company in New York, they're like 25 employees, and they're like, we're looking to acquire. We're looking to acquire. If you can find us anyone, we'll pay your referral fee. I like, it's top of mind for everybody. I'm sure you see it more than I do, but it's a lot. It's very busy, shaking and baking.
Do you so to that front, do you keep a line on the candidates that you place in, like, or do they, or vice versa? Do they keep a line open with you in the event that something like that happens, so that they could recycle back into the candidate pool, or how does that work?
Yeah. So as soon as the candidates, like we don't have much communication with the people once they get placed, but if they come back on the market, which means like they have to tell us, we have to get it in writing from the client or from the candidate, like they're no longer employed, then we'll work with them. And we love those situations. I'm not sure if either one of them might like that situation. They got canned, or maybe the client didn't know they were resigning. But yeah, we love those situations, because if we got proof of concept that they're fee worthy, we love to work with them again. We'll love to work with the candidates again. But it doesn't happen that often, honestly.
That's probably a good thing.
Yes. Yes, right. That's true. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Right. Like it's a little bit contentious situation there, right? Like, hey, it didn't,
Yeah.
why is this happening? What happened? Is this a good thing? Is this mutual? All the stories that come along with that. Um, you must be really good at interviewing, because I know like a lot of technical, at least in the MSP business, like, have you heard the concept of like a technical interview, a ride along, if you would, right? Where they're like, hey, let's just throw you into the office, or, for a half a day or a day, and just, let's see, maybe you like it, maybe we like you. We'll find out real quick, right? Once you're in
Yeah.
the pool. Is that kind of thing happen?
I do not see it that often. I think it's one way to kind of, I guess, deter any candidates from being that interested, because it's not the norm. But like, that's great. If an MSP can position their opportunities like, this is part of our interview process, come in for half a day, we'll pay you, put you on a machine, see what you can do. Like, that is awesome, because you get to really test drive the situation, and it's good for the candidate. You want the candidate to feel comfortable coming in there, and so they know what they're getting into. But it's kind of rare. It's happening right now. I probably only see it happen just, less than 5 times a year.
Huh.
But it's good for everybody if they can do that.
I would think that's something that would happen more often.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, because, like, listen, you might be like, the people that are really good at standardized testing, and the really people that
Yeah,
are really
not me. Yeah.
right. But like the hands-on people, like, you put them in front of something and they tend to just get right into it, right? It's like riding a bike, right? It's just
Right.
in nature for them. But you really can't do that in a Zoom, right? Like, yeah,
Right.
like you can try, but like it's just different. But I'm surprised that this isn't more frequent. Like, you're not seeing this as, like, I would hope it's starting to become something that's even recommended. But if it's 5 times a year out of 175 candidates a month, like, that's 0.0002.
Yeah, it's not that many. It's not that many.
Yeah.
But it actually normally works out when companies do that. I feel like it has a high hit rate. I don't know why that is. Maybe I should consider baking that in my model. Thanks for the idea, George.
Hey, if like, listen, if it helps them, you said you work on 900 MSPs. Listen, there's 90. I guess everybody has a different number. Let's just go with the low number: 95,000 people that could be categorized as IT, MSP, VAR, whatever term you want to put into the pool of North America. Okay. So like 900, just a small chunk of those, but pretty good chunk. And like, if they can get a better result, and then that practice spreads through the rest of the industry, because it's a community like every other industry, then maybe we're a little bit more successful. Why
That's
not?
right. We'll call it the George. We'll say, why don't you just do the George? And this is where the candidate comes and works for you for 4 hours. And we'll package it up. Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm sure you've heard the whole millennial, Gen Z, whatever, different opinions on work ethic and yada, yada, yada. But like, there's a little bit of truth to that, right? And like, let's face it, this can be a high pressure industry, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're on the front lines, there's an outage happening that day. Both Microsoft and Amazon, respectively, in the last 2 weeks, separate of CrowdStrike, had outages, like half day outages. Like, you got a lot of your customers banging on your door, being salty. That's not the best situation, but like they're lining up. It's not one every so often. Like, you're jammed, right? Like, so like, you almost can't, grace under pressure, grace under fire, whatever term, the cliche you want to use. Like, you just don't know until you're in it.
You don't. And I think, yeah, because like our whole shtick is like, you're an MSP. We used to have only MSPs. And so we're only going to give you MSP candidates. And I think it's good to check that box because you don't know what you're going to get. And honestly, it happens to candidates too. We'll get a phone call from the candidate 3-6 months in. They're like, this is just not what I originally thought it was, not going well. And then we're doing like a conference call with their hiring manager and trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I mean, from where we're sitting as like a broker and agent, we get both sides of the story. Interview is hard, man. Even for me.
I don't know if it's art or science, but clearly it's something you do often. You ever hear that other things like, hey, if you do something for 10,000 hours,
yeah. Expert.
Probably done 10,000 hours or more in interviewing. I would.
You said it, not me. Not me.
I would hope. As part, like, a lot of people put a lot of, and it seems like you do a combination of things because you're very MSP focused here, but like the personality test, the disc test, and there's so many different kind of versions of this, right? Where like you're trying to figure out what this person is actually good at versus what they think they're good at, right? And like, are they a high wire person? Are they a laid back person? This, that, and the other, right? So like, like we always laugh with the NFL, right? Wonderlic. What does that tell you? I don't know what. Like, I eventually stopped using it a couple years ago, but like, do you have a profile based on role that you're like, usually for a level 1 help desk frontline person, this is the type of thing that we look for that fits best based on our experience versus, hey, project person that needs to be very detail oriented, but the level 1 guy needs to be like a little bit cool under pressure so that he's not flustered, while he's dealing with, what could be, rapidly evolving situation. Like, do you like, is that the type of thing that you have, kind of down at this point?
I think I think we got a good beat on it. We have a model and it seems to translate into, successful hires. That's a great question. I really like that question. So the way we do it, it's very standardized, systemized. They go through the same process. And, when we go into the way we operate, so like when we find candidates, we exist by having like economies of scale for jobs. So we have jobs posted everywhere in mass. And in some ways, like I'm really just like half my company is like a job posting company. We tracked around 44,000 resumes a month. And so when we interview someone because they came to us, and then we interview that candidate, regardless if we have a position for them, because we're so niche, right? And we operate in only 8 cities. And MSPs are attracted to the same thing and have the same profiles. We'll bring that candidate in, do our interview process, and then we'll turn around and say, okay, where does this candidate can be the best fit? So when it comes to like matching up the culture, the presentation, cool under pressure, it really depends on how the role they have open and their company culture. But there's still things like, are they engaging? We call it poppy. Are they interesting to listen to? Are they energetic? Are they well spoken and articulate? It's okay to be not those things, but we'll like package up and we try and label them. And then we use those as like indicators for what that company culture is in that position. And so that's our way of doing it. And then when it comes to like the Wonderlic test, we don't administer one of those. Those things are fine. It's one piece of the puzzle. And if you can get it and you subscribe to it, good for you. The only hang up with those are, I always tell like my clients, like, don't make it the very first interaction this candidate has with your company is a test. Sell them on how great you are first, then have them jump through some hoops. So put it towards the end of the interview process because you'll start getting candidates that are good. They're going to be picky and have options, and they're not going to jump through hoops like that if the other companies, aren't having them do it. But yeah, Wonderlic's are kind of common.
It's fair. From a just brass tack standpoint, right? Like, a lot of people sometimes have to overspend to get a person, right? I don't know if that's just fatigue, right? Hey, I've been through so many people.
Mm,
I'm at the point now where I need someone. I need them to be the right fit. And if I gotta overspend and figure it out later to get them in, then that's what I got to do. Like, obviously, it's an uncomfortable position from a budgeting standpoint from the company, right? Because like they're now
yeah,
going outside of their norm. But as I'm sure you know, and everybody else knows, not just in time, there's a dollar cost every time you onboard somebody, right? By the
right.
time they matriculate, right? There's just hard costs involved in doing that, and it adds up, right? When you are consulting with these 900 plus MSPs and you're like, hey, your budget's not going to do it. You're going to have to, like, we've tried, it's just not working. Either you're going to have to go outside of your footprint, right? If you're in office, maybe you got to go hybrid or remote, or you got to, like, because maybe we need to pull somebody from another geography that's not in order to get to your price point, or maybe you just got to find more money, right? Because otherwise you can't get, you're not going to get to a successful point. How often does that conversation happen?
A lot happens a lot. We pumped out every 2 years we create what's called the Bowman Williams MSP salary guide, and you can like search for like 36 different positions and it describes that tier. Then it gives like the median, the average, and then the range. And we use that as a good benchmark, but it's usually kind of a wide range. When it comes to a client, like part of our job is making sure and translating their job requirements and compensation to make sure it aligns with the realities of the market. And so a lot of time we'll tell them and we'll give them examples. Here's the typical candidate. We'll show them the resume and the years of experience and what they're doing, and then we'll say here's like 2 or 3 of them. Like you can see what they're making, and here's what you typically get at that price point. And so MSP is like, oh man, but you know what? Like I heard that's 75,000 is an agreeable price for a level 2.5, and it's like yes, you're kind of on the cusp there, and it's on the lower end, but you're in that range. But if that candidate's got 3-4 years of doing that exact job, they're gonna be leaving for like 5K more at least. So also like aligning it with good talent. But yeah, that calibration is part of what we try and help people do, and it's hard. I think that most companies will probably agree. It's difficult making sure your budget aligns because sometimes you need it, but you can't afford it, and then like what do you do? But I think it's a calculus a lot of companies are always going through. And we had I mean, 2 years ago after COVID, salaries exploded. So like project engineers are averaging around like 95,000. Now they're 100, 120, 125,000. That's the biggest
Wow,
jump in any position. So that's a huge leap, and that's a difficult pill to swallow.
that's a huge jump.
Huge, huge.
To that point, when you're interviewing your candidates, 14,000 resumes, I'm sure there's a lot of automation and AI or machine or some sort of software in there. But that being said, like, what do you, is it a red flag for you? I mean, generally we're told it is, but is it a red flag for you when somebody's like, well, you don't seem to stick anywhere very long, right? Like, 6 months, 8 months, a year, like it's not a long time. And like, now this is a trend. There's more than a trend now, right? You're 4 or 5 jobs in and you're never there for more than a year because you're salary jumping, right? Like you're just basically playing the field every year to try and do this ladder thing. Is that a flag?
So I don't think, I wouldn't expect an MSP to pay us a premium to find someone that doesn't have like proven stickability. So that's kind of a like non-starter for us. If someone, we call it being hoppy, if they have, it indicates in their resume that they've been slightly hoppy. Let's say if they are hoppy, they're out for us. We're just not the best resource for them. So they can find a job on their own and they're great, but they're just not a good resource for us. But if they have, it's like kind of on the cusp of that, and they can't provide adequate answers that explain why this would have happened, then we would rule them out. I think that like the MSP industry has relatively high turnover, and whether you're like an MSP is working with us or not, like finding that tenure is like super critical. I think it's super critical. Huge
Agreed.
piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
Chat GPT, resume writing. I mean, like, I'm
I think,
sure you're
yeah,
seeing something like this, right?
I gotta be honest with you. So like I use ChatGPT on a daily basis for help like content and some marketing branding. And I get marketed in my inbox all the time about like all these different tools. I have not find it to be like ubiquitous in my world yet. And so I'm not even really sure how it fits in. I'm sure someone smarter than me and staffing has probably got to get beat on it and using it in a way that I'm not. But I usually don't find that much. I couldn't use it that much in my model. But maybe candidates are using it for resume writing. Honestly, they'd be dumb if they weren't. I think it's probably really, really helpful for doing that. But yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. What do you think? Think people are using it a lot for resume writing? Yeah, it's good for job descriptions.
Cover letter, resume writing for sure.
Yeah.
Like, if you do have 14,000, apps coming through your system every month.
44,000.
I'm sorry, 44,000. I
Yes.
had the number way off by tens of thousands. Like, you're like probably looking for keywords and phrases, right? Probably a lot of skill set things, but like, you have your let's call it algorithm, right? And the system searching for certain things in order to hit your matches. But like what on the opposite side, it's the candidate saying, well, I need to be, what are the keywords? Write me a resume with the keywords that are going to get me hired, right? The problem is that if you get enough people feeding the machine, your system and the brain on the other side are going to eventually line up.
That's a good way of looking at it. That could be very misleading. Yeah. So most of what we're doing is manual, to the extent where, if a candidate applies more than 3 times, we don't want to receive the resume because we got it. And then when it comes in, it gets funneled to one of the recruiters here. And then in the subject line and in the body of the email, we have our system pulling out keywords, but they're usually just to help them prioritize their day. They're still going to open up the resume. And I think, the way we do it, my recruitment team, the average tenure here is over 5 years for them. They just go through it, but we keep it manual. It's probably kind of grueling. But yeah, that's how we go through it. We probably should be using AI as I listen to my self-talk. And if you have any good tools, I am all ears.
Got it. See that, guys? Always an opportunity out there. I love you had a couple things that I think are good takeaways here, that if I'm an MSP and I'm hiring people, and in my other businesses, I do hire people, probably not the best interviewer, but that's just me admitting that I'm not a good interviewer. As an MSP, I have 36 roles or 35 roles. Here's the guide, right? Here's the salary ranges. Here's what we want you to know about what you're looking for. So like that sounds like a really good resource. So I don't know if that's like, hey, I need to engage in order to see that intel, but like that sounds really, okay. Yeah. Cool. Where do people get that?
Go to bowmanwilliams.com at the very top, download the MSP salary guide.
That's cool.
Thanks, George.
Definitely go download that right now. Stop what you're doing and go download that. Okay. Second thing I liked was, I don't know if it's spelled out on your website, but the process that you go through, right? Like like here's why we're good at MSP. Here's our process. It's been pretty good. We only see 4 or 5% kickback. That's really good batting average. So like, let me tell you why this works, because we've gotten to this after trial and error. Is that anywhere that they can see that?
Probably also bowmanwilliams.com. It should outline it. Difficult to convey all of that, but we've done our best.
Okay, cool. And then in the same place, if they're really interested and they're like, hey, this guy sounds like he knows our business because this is all he does. And what are the cities that you say you work in specifically? I think you said there was like 8 cities. Was that right?
I did. Yes, thank you. So that's going to be Washington, D.C., the New York metropolitan, of course, including northern New Jersey, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, and then most recently, Tampa and Atlanta.
So if you're looking for people in any one of those cities and they're like, hey, I would rather go with somebody that's like industry specific rather than just a generalist. And no offense to Robert Half, where you spend some time at, like that seems to me like big company guy, not MSP guy, right? BowmanWilliams.com is where they should start, or do you have them go to a special place?
BowmanWilliams.com, or you can message me on LinkedIn.
All right.
That's probably the best place to go. Thank you,
well,
George.
Tell them how to spell your last name, John.
Last name is spelled, full name is John Davenjay. Last name is spelled like Davenport, only it's Davenjay, Davenjay.
Perfect. Do you happen to find yourself out of your Maryland office? Do you end up at industry events at all?
You know what? I was hot and heavy with the industry events. I was, felt very lucky to speak at ConnectWise multiple times, and then the Channel Futures events. And I love doing it. I haven't been to an event in probably a year. Been a year. But yeah, I get out of the office. I do.
Okay.
And I get out more.
Well, listen, if you happen to be at any of the big ones that we mentioned, right? You know, they're all going to be like September,
That's
October,
right.
November every year. It's like, you know, I call that the gauntlet because they're all so close to each other. Definitely let us know. Would love to meet up with you, grab a beer, talk shop. But yeah, I find value as a guy who's been in the sandbox here for started in 2000, 2001. We're in 24. It's not a pretty good run there. This is still in 2024, still in the top 3 to 5 things that every MSP owner, when surveyed, say they still have struggle.
I know.
You've created a business around it, but it is a problem for, and I would think not for lack of talent pool, like it's out there. It's the struggle to go through the process and come out with a good outcome. I mean, that's
right.
really what it is. And I know a lot of business owners that have tried let's try and outsource it. Like not even out of the country, just to like a help desk or a knock or some sort of third party resource. And the problem there is like there's a lot of selling propositions of the MSP business, but like good service is probably somewhere at the top of that. Like when it's not your people, you lose the ability to like deliver that store. Yeah, control that. So, like for the people that go that way, I mean, I feel like it's out of exhaustion. It's usually not a money thing. It's just like I can't figure it out and I can't, like time is killing me.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of MSPs in that 12 to 15 employee range, they're typically the owners recognize they need to hire. They punt kick the responsibility to a help desk manager or a service manager. And they typically, not always, right? They're going to kind of fumble through it. And they typically don't know how to feed the top of the funnel, the job description, elicit the right response, and it comes through. And people get frustrated. And I feel like a lot more companies right now are starting to kick things outside their own organization, white labeling overseas. I feel like, it's probably because like they don't want to increase overhead. They're not hiring because it's opportunistic and because they have the business. So I think they want to keep it overhead flat and reduced, and they go overseas. But that's happening more and more. But yeah, I think that's most companies struggle. Yeah, I've seen it the last 15 years.
I've seen people go there, and I've seen people say this didn't work out well and come back. So
yes,
such is the circle that we all live in. John, I really appreciate you jumping on here. I learned a lot from this. And by the way, that's kind of why we do these, right? Like you're an expert in your lane, and the people running MSPs, definitely this is not their lane. And so like we need to learn from people, and this is one way to do it. So bowmanwilliams.com, check it out. Definitely go and just download the one thing, that the guide. I mean, sounds like that's like gold information that you would otherwise stumble into the hard way. Don't do that. Just download that and work backwards. Thanks, John, for jumping on. Appreciate you taking an hour out of your day. Everyone else, this session was absolutely recorded. Lots of good advice here. Go back and rewind, and then hit John on LinkedIn and like ask questions. Sounds like he's a guy who does answer his messages, and like I like that. Appreciate it, man.
George, this was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You got
I
it.
appreciate
Go
it.
on, guys. See ya.
Bye.